So after a lengthy running process...
What?
Yeah, it's a new engine. It's all run in.
Mate, it's got a metre-long exhaust and it's a race car with no rego. Where do you think I'm running this thing in? I'm going to strap this to the dyno and then I'm just going to let it eat.
What are we doing today, Broomy?
Watching him lead at the moment, apparently. He said if he does circles, will he get on full boost? I said, don't crash my car.
So we're on E85 today, Broomy.
Yeah, United Race Ethanol E85 with a mix of 200 mils per 20 litres of Penrite race cast.
How much fuel does this hold?
I think just shy of 20 litres.
So what's the plan today, Broomy?
To drive it back on the trailer in one piece. That's pretty much always the plan when you go to a dyno.
What sort of boost are you going to put in it?
We'll ramp it up, so we'll tune it on 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 pound. We'll see how we're going and we'll push it probably to 35. ECU out of this is actually ECU out of my FD circuit car, so it actually only has a 3-bar map sensor, which means it only goes up to about 28 psi, but that last load cell you can trick it a bit and just put a bit of extra fuel in, and you know, push it to somewhere in the mid 30s and should still be pretty good. So if that's what it needs, then that's what we'll give it.
So you don't have any expectation on what power you want out of this at the moment?
No, especially with an auto and a big stall converter and rotaries, they don't make this mega sort of horsepower that guys see out of manual cars always. So as long as the air fuel's where we want it to be with the right timing and the right boost, we'll know it'll do what it needs to do at the racetrack. Yeah. We're not overly concerned about a number on a dyno. You know, you always see people quoting big horsepower figures for dynos and they don't match up at the track. So dyno's really just the tuning tool to make sure everything's okay, and then to get it at the racetrack and race reliably is the main aim for here. So yeah, no power figure expectation at all. Just to reliably put a good tune in it and get it to the racetrack. So this has got a 101 exhaust housing on it. GD42 frame comes in 101, 115, 128, 145. Rotary guys for the street would have like a 101, like this is. Probably the race guys, especially with ethanol, probably would normally do a 115, but because it's got the auto in it, I wanted more that with no nitrous it to come up. Definitely guarantee it's going to come up on the converter at first. So we'll test this housing, see how it goes. I mean, as you put more boost into it, it means greater exhaust pressure. So we'll monitor that as well and see how we go. But yeah, we can always step up to the 115 if we need to. It'll just be that balancing act of, does the 115 work properly with the converter without having to need nitrous? So I don't want to use nitrous, mainly for the fact of it's just another thing you have to service. Filling the bottle, is the bottle temperature right, and this and that. So just another thing to go wrong essentially. As it is right now, it's a very basic sort of system. But the nitrous just adds another level of complexity, so to speak, to it, just for something else to go wrong. And if you don't turn the bottle on, or if you don't have the bottle heater on, and it all won't work at all. So as it is right now, we've had it up on the trans brake, and it comes up really good. So we're pretty confident it should work well. But yeah, it just depends on how much boost we can put in it versus the exhaust back pressure with that smaller rear housing. So
I guess, what would you be revving it to today?
We're probably, because this is, essentially this is just a factory Series 4 13B turbo engine.
There's nothing fancy in this, really.
No, it does have extra dowels in it, but there's no multiple piece crank, there's no billet plates. There's nothing special about this engine. It does have the power seal, apex seals in it and that, but other than that, this is basically a Series 4 RX-7's stock power plant. So it's all the rotating assembly, the plates, the housing, it's all Mazda. So it's we'll see how it all goes. Shouldn't be a problem, but it's rotary, so you never know.
You'd go to at least 8,500, would you?
Yeah. We'll probably We'll probably rev this to about 8,500 at least. We might. I mean, it'll. The main thing will be if, especially with the dyno, once a car stops making power,
there's no point staying on
there's no real reason just to keep on revving. I mean, if the smaller exhaust housing does stop making power at say 7,000 RPM, yeah, we'll rev it out to 8.5, because that's what we'll be doing at the track. But if it stops making power at 8.2, we're not going to rev it till 9 grand just for the sake of it. We also want to be conscious of, when you're in the burnout, we want to set the rev limit at probably about 8.5. We want to give the ECU enough of a chance to catch the over rev, to actually use the rev limit. So if you set the rev limiter too high, you never definitely want to exceed 9,000 RPM. If you set the rev limit for 9,000, if the revs are coming up that fast, an ECU doesn't have enough time to catch it and stop and bring it back below that 9 and keep it at that 9. So you want to have a couple of 100 RPM safety buffer always for those sort of instances, especially too if you come out of the hole in first gear and it blows the tyres off and it climbs straight away. You want to still have that little safety margin on whatever your absolute peak total maximum RPM is. So if it had a sort of like a 2-piece crank or something like that, yeah, sure, you could look at revving it to close to 10 or plus or whatever. But for this setup here, 8,500 RPM with that exhaust housing too, it's going to stop making power by then anyway. So it's just not it's not worth revving it anymore. Line you can see there's TPS, so nothing, then basically 100, and then we stop the run here. So you can see this vertical line here. That's where I've just got the cursor, and all this data here is basically what they're looking at. So you can see they're 31 pound at that particular point, but it's about 30-31 psi. You can see here AFR's 10.43. Now for this air fuel ratio sensor, that's maxed. So that's not 10.43, that could be 9.5, that could be anything. So we're just going to keep on leaning out now a little bit. Now we've got the boost that we want to be at. We saw before on the dyno graph that we leaned out at 27 pound of boost. We're obviously pegged on the air fuel ratio meter again. We leaned it out to just even 1050, and leaning out to 1050 netted us like another 40 rural kilowatts. So we've just seen then we took about 5% of fuel out, and we went up another essentially 40 rural kilowatts as well. So let's see if we can take another 5% of fuel out and see what that does, and just see how much power we can make. But realistically, on 30 pounds, what's it making now? It's making 360 kilowatts at the rears. If we can get it to close to 400 with the Audon converter, I'll be pretty happy. It'll be pretty near the goal sort of that I've got sort of set for it, the time that I want to run. I know I need to probably make that kind of power to run really deep into the 9s, and high 140 mile an hour. So if we can get close to that sort of that 400 kilowatt mark, I think we'll be going a long way to doing that. And I mean, realistically, we're only at 31 pound of boost. When we get to the racetrack, if we want to we're close to the time we want to really smash the time we're doing, just put another couple of pounds of boost into it. We can do that quite easily too with the Microtech data logger. We can log every run, see exactly where we need to be, and easily just put a bit more fuel in if needed, or just more boost. So, all right, we'll take a bit of fuel out now, and then we'll do another pull.
Okay, so how much power did we end up making?
Last time I checked the dyno sheet, it was a bazillion horsepower at 30 psi.
A bazillion.
Bazillion's a pretty accurate number compared to most of the other people out there quoting dyno sheet numbers out there. So, I mean, realistically, unless you actually go to the drag strip and get a mile an hour figure, the dyno sheet doesn't mean anything. Wankers out there quoting 800 plus horsepower and then running 120 mile an hour, I don't care. What is your dyno sheet trap?
Yes.
We're gonna go out to the drag strip and I'm gonna tell you how much power it makes. Let's just say it roughly made a bit over 400 rural kilowatts at 30 psi, but again, who cares? If it had a manual in it, it'd probably make 600 kilowatts. If it was on a different brand dyno, it might make 700. It means nothing. Let's head out to the drag strip and let's see what it really makes.
Yeah, we'll go to Heathcote and give it a shakedown.
Bazillion's a pretty accurate number considering most of the other... Oh,
Hey! Got one job to do.
don't move!